Hello. Today I'm going to talk about how do you get a product interview in 30 days. The most common question that I get from clients, from people who reach out to me is I am not happy in my role. I want to aim bigger. I want bigger challenges. Maybe you were aiming for a promotion, whether you're at the director level or a senior individual contributor who wants to move up. Maybe it's not even about getting promoted. Maybe it's about being in a more progressive organization, a more reputable organization, because you want to grow your career. You want bigger challenges. You want more. Now, with any goal in life, how do you get there? How do you get there? How do you achieve it? I'm going to break down the step by step in terms of how to achieve it. I'm going to use a real life example of a client that I recently started working with only a month ago, and he has already gotten an interview. And by the way, this is not like an easy case because this client has been a founder for 6 years. He had his own company, a coaching business, and he had no idea how to translate his experience to a role out there. And after some soul searching and working with me, we decided that a product role would be the right fit. So, how did I help him get the interview in just 30 days? Because I hear a lot of things about, oh my God, it's impossible to get an interview these days. I have to apply to hundreds of jobs. And if you are a senior professional, honestly, especially if you are at the director level, you don't have time to apply to like 1,000 jobs. That's ridiculous. But the other barrier, and what people may have been advising you, is you need a referral, you need a network in order to be able to get into these organizations. No one is going to hire you if you apply cold. And that is not true. It is absolutely not true because this client applied cold. He only applied to 30 jobs and he ended up getting an interview within only a month of working with me. And by the way, he did not apply for 30 days. He actually only started applying for a week and he got the interview. So let me break it down. The first thing that I wanted to say is when you are applying for jobs, it can be very difficult on your nervous system. And what you tell yourself is when you get rejected that maybe I'm not good enough, and this is why I got rejected for the opportunities. That rejection makes you spiral. It causes you to doubt yourself. It causes you to think that maybe you need to apply to a more junior role. It could confuse you and make you start shotgunning and applying to all kinds of roles. And it could create an analysis paralysis where you start like questioning, oh my God, what do I enjoy doing? Am I even good at anything? And sometimes when you've attached your identity to a specific role, maybe you've been doing the same role for the last 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. You build an entire story that that's all you can do at that organization, at that role. And so this client was going through something similar. He wasn't in corporate, he had his own business, but he attached his entire identity to that business and he thought that there's nothing else he could do but his business. And it was just very difficult for him to shed that and to actually figure out outside of this business who the heck he is. So here is the first thing that we worked on. Knowing that he had spent more than 6 years building a dating coaching business. Where we started was I looked at his career archetype assessment. So, what does that mean? In my program, when people work with me, I have a career archetype assessment. And that career archetype assessment classifies what your professional archetype is. Every person has a professional archetype. Some of you are builders, some of you are more on the strategic side, some of you are innate coaches. Doesn't matter what your level is, whether you're a senior individual contributor, director, or VP, you have a specific archetype that pretty much articulates your value proposition. And so, how I figure out my clients' archetypes is we go through their entire professional history. I dig through their story and I look at some of their leadership values. I pull all of that together and I pretty much identify what they are meant to do in their career. Not just based on what they love doing, but what comes naturally to them. And this is beyond, titles and things like that. I'm not a huge believer in helping people figure out what their calling is and what their target role is based on title. I actually look at your skill set and the value that you create for organizations. Based on that, we do the translation and figure out what role is the right fit. So with this client, I dug into his stories. One of his stories was he is such a builder. He loves building things from scratch. It's almost like Lego pieces. And he also has parents who are teachers. And so he has this natural ability to teach concepts to people. He's a very great communicator. He's good at connecting the dots. And when I looked at what he did in his business, a lot of what he did was conducting customer interviews, analyzing patterns from thousands of, conversations that he's had, building an entire curriculum for his clients, developing and iterating a scalable customer experience, changing his product based on the customer feedback. So when I looked at all of that and pieced it all together, we removed the doubts in his mind that he could not pivot into product. It became very obvious. And while he kind of knew that's what he should get into, I confirmed it and validated it. And here's the thing, friends. When you have someone external and neutral who is experienced at understanding what I've worked, with over 1,000 professionals, and I've helped over 1,000 professionals identify their niche and land roles that are aligned with who they are. And when you have someone like that, being able to ask you the right questions and give you the confirmation that you're in the right path, it does something to you that's very different, which is it gives you that conviction that you can absolutely play that role. And I see this all the time in highly ambitious professionals is what keeps you from applying to jobs and what keeps you from converting your interviews into offers is that lack of conviction. You might logically tell yourself that I can do this role or I'm going to fake it till I make it. But until you embody that role and you know 100% that you're going to succeed and that you belong in that organization and you are going to belong in that role and you understand the value that you bring to the table at a deep level, it's very difficult for you to articulate your value and it's very difficult for you to convince hiring managers that you can play that role at that next level from what you were doing before. Okay. So once he saw that evidence, he got that conviction that he is a product person. I was able to pull examples by looking at all of his career history. examples that helped him see that he is great. He would make a great product manager. Okay, so one of the questions that I get is, do you need to start over if you want to pivot into product, as an example? Do you need to get into an entry level role, or even like a role below where you're at? Because some of the clients who come to me, they've already had, 5, 10, 15, 20 years of experience, but they still want to pivot because they want to change. They want to do something different. I've had a client who was basically a VP of customer experience, and he wanted to pivot into product. And so the question is, do you need to start over in order to make that change? Do you need to take a more junior level? And the answer is usually no, to be honest with you. But what you need to do is to stop expecting employers to translate your experience for you. With my client, what I told him is, the recruiter is not going to look at dating coach and automatically imagine that you're someone who has spent years analyzing customer behavior, developing offers, changing pricing, improving the customer journey, and finding the market fit. You have to spell out. You have to spell it out for hiring managers and recruiters. And the mistake that you all keep doing is you start talking to AI and telling AI to help you translate your experience. But the thing is, when you're just talking to AI, you're pretty much imposing what you think is the data that is needed in order for you to be convincing. And so all AI does is it parrots what you said to it, and it just plops, some, product keywords. And that makes it superficial. It makes what you are sharing on your resume, on your LinkedIn profile, very superficial. So what I get my clients to do instead, so that it's not superficial, is write out stories of what they have done. What we do is we look at every single role that you've held, and we ask some of these important questions, such as, what business or customer problem were you solving? What decision did you personally make? What evidence informed that decision? What changed because of it? What would the target company call that capability? So for example, instead of saying, I talk to potential clients, which is an activity, I would instead coach my client to say, I conducted more than 30 structured customer interviews to validate demand and identify the highest value customer segment, which is evidence of product judgment. Instead of just saying, I created a course, I developed a scrappy minimum viable product, mapped the customer journey, and iterated the experience based on observed customer needs, which demonstrates product development. Instead of, I charged more money, I coached him to say, I strengthened the positioning, customer outcomes, and trust required to evolve the offer across higher price points, which demonstrates pricing and monetization thinking. So this isn't about stuffing your resume with product jargon. It is about showing the thinking behind the work. And it's very difficult to do that on your own, friends, because you're inside the jar. You've been doing all of these things. They seem natural to you. And it's really difficult to read what you've done when you're inside the jar. It's very difficult to read the label from the outside when you are inside the jar. It's also not, the way we think as human beings too, the way we remember things is through conversation. You need to be able to talk to someone and have a conversation with them and have that person ask you questions. And it can't just be any person. It has to be someone with product context and experience. I mean, I have been a product leader in my corporate world, so I understand the nuances of what it takes to be a great product leader. I also understand what questions to ask you in order to get you out of that, like I call it brain fog, because it's all a mess in your mind and I help you organize it. And this is what I have trained as a career coach and have developed as a skill set for more than 6 years to help my clients get out of their head and stop underestimating what they've done. Okay, so the next question, and friends, if you have questions that are relevant to how to get an interview in 30 days, whether you're in product or not, please plop them in the chat. I would love to answer them. Okay. Okay. Here's another question that people ask me. Should you apply broadly or niche down? So before we worked together, this client had applied to product roles, education technology roles, consulting roles, business analysis roles, and several other categories. And that is understandable because he was still trying to figure it out on his own and he had a hard time identifying what he's great at because he didn't have a mentor or a coach to help him with this. The thing is, when you know you are capable of doing many things, applying broadly can feel like it makes sense and it can feel like it's keeping your options open. But broad applications often create a broad story, and a broad story does not make a recruiter or a hiring manager confident that you can help them solve a specific problem within their organization. The thing is, companies hire a specific person to solve a specific problem. If you're sharing a variety of experience, then you're blending with everyone else. How are you going to be different when you say that you do 10 different things and you can go after 10 different jobs? This is something that I feel like I'm a broken record saying, but think about branding 101. Any product that you love that is successful in the market, whether it's the iPhone, whether it's the Apple Watch, whether it is, I don't know, your favorite ice cream, why do you pick that product and not another product? It's not because the product markets itself as providing you every single feature out there. It's because it differentiates itself as a product that is exceptional at a particular thing. So for example, iPhone is not going to try to say that it's the phone for everyone. It is very specific at targeting people who are generally not extremely tech savvy and love aesthetics, right? Android will try to say that it has a great battery life and it's more about practicality and it's more geared towards developers who like to tinker, with basically the actual device, versus iPhone are for people who are not developers, who don't want to tinker, with basically all the apps and things like that. And they just want a simple aesthetic and they care about appearance. So products that you really love, don't try to be like everything for everyone. And so that's the same for you as a professional. If you come across like you could fit into any company in any job, then no one is going to see you as a fit. Okay, the thing is, the employer needs to be able to tell what problem they should hire you to solve, what level you belong in, why are you interested in this particular role, and what evidence makes you the best candidate. So with this client, we started concentrating the story around product while remaining open to product adjacent opportunities. And we realized that one of his, superpowers is monetization and pricing. And so here's what happened. I niched him down so much. And at the beginning, he didn't want to niche down. He applied to 30 jobs, did not get an interview. After one conversation with me, and after recommending that he niches down to pricing and monetization and focus on dating products, guess what? The next day after our call, he got an interview at Bumble. Okay? So, this is why niching down is extremely important. And a lot of you resist that, partly because you feel like you're giving up part of your identity by niching down and being focused. Part of you has the scarcity mindset of like, oh my God, there are not a lot of jobs. I need to keep my options open. But it's counterintuitive. It really is counterintuitive. You don't need 1,000 jobs to get an offer. You only need one job. That's it. And so niching down makes it so much easier for you. But again, the reason people struggle with this is because they can't figure out their niche on their own, and they need to be able to work with someone who gives them the framework and allows them to narrow it down. Okay, so the other question is, how do you know whether your experience is relevant? Many people compare titles. I do not base someone's capability on whether they can land a job or not based on a title. I never look at that. What I do is I look at the underlying problems that you've been solving in your past 3 organizations. Some of it is going to be, let's focus on product, right? Let us say that you have been in real estate and you've been really good at creating a product strategy and making your organization more competitive compared to other competitors who have similar products. So when I look at that, I think, well, you understand the real estate domain. We might say, let's double down on real estate if you enjoy that domain. Or we might say, you know what, if you don't want to stay within real estate and you want to go into other industries, what are some of the things that you've been solving within the real estate world that can be transferable to other domains and industries? For example, when I was a product manager and I was working on real estate products, one of the products that I worked on was to build basically a report that would show an entire portfolio of properties. And one of the features was to allow real estate agents to forecast basically the value of the properties. So forecasting, budgeting, that's not just, within real estate. That can be transferable to investments. That can be transferable to fintech. Even just the act of reporting, that's transferable to many types of industries. Looking at, building reports for executives that give you a high level view, data analytics. So there's a lot in there that I look at, and then we figure out what the direction is. So with this client, it was just so simple for me. I saw it right away, and he wasn't able to see it, because when you're inside the problem, it's hard for you to figure out what you should do and what the strategy should be in order for you to land a role. And for me, it was simple because, again, I do this in my sleep now since I've helped over 1,000 professionals. For me, like, the low-hanging fruit was like, dude, you have like so much depth in understanding the dating market. Why don't you just apply to one of those like dating companies like Bumble or Hinge or whatever and see what happens? And the other aspect that I told them, don't overly fixate on the product manager title. You have very strong pricing and monetization knowledge. What if you combine that with your dating domain experience? And lo and behold, he got the interview. Okay? So those are just some of the things that I work on with my clients, because again, when you have imposter syndrome, when you have a nonlinear career, you start doubting yourself. You can't see clearly, and it's hard for you to figure out what to focus on. And you know what the kicker is? Some of his mentors were telling him that he should build a portfolio, that he should create these prototypes, that he should start pitching to 100 people in order to get an interview. And I'm just like, we don't need to do all of this. We don't. The issue is fit. And all we need to do, I said to him, is target the right organizations and you'll get the interview. And guess what? Lo and behold, the resume that we worked on, he applied cold. He didn't have to network. He didn't need a referral, and he got the interview right away without a portfolio and all that headache. So that's the thing. You need a streamlined strategy. And some of this advice out there is making you work hard, put in way too much wasted effort, and it doesn't yield into interviews. This is why people are mad, because you're getting this wrong advice on doing so much by all these people on LinkedIn telling you that you need to jump through hoops, do all this stuff, and it's meaningless. More effort does not translate to results. The right strategy translates to the right results. It's kind of like going to the gym and you have poor form, you're using the wrong set of weights, and you're just doing this like 100 times. If I just do this 100 times, am I going to lose weight? Or if I take a weight that's like 20 pounds and I have proper form and I do the shoulder presses to the point where my muscles are exhausted, and all it takes me is 8 reps instead of doing this 100 times, right? So this is literally what you guys are doing when you're applying to hundreds of jobs. You're applying left and center. Your positioning is off. You're not telling your story in great depth. You're not talking about the products that you've built. You're not telling the story behind the product that you've built correctly. It's exactly as if you're doing this 100 times instead of just, lifting heavy and just doing 8 reps. I know it's a crazy analogy, but that's practically what happens. And so it's understandable that you would get mad, and it's understandable that you would blame the market because you're working too hard and you're not getting the results that you want. You're wasting time. So that's what happens. So how many applications should you send before changing your strategy? Listen, if you're applying to hundreds of jobs and you're not getting results, if you've applied to 30 jobs and you haven't gotten an interview, that means that the strategy that you're using is the wrong strategy. It should not take you more than 30 applications to get an interview. And I'm saying this based on data, based on the past year that I've been working with clients. I've worked with over like 30 people in the last year. And I worked with over 1,000 people in the last 6 years. So no excuse about saying to me that, oh, but the market is worse, because I've worked with people in all phases of the market. When the market was better, when COVID was really bad and companies were not hiring, and I've worked with people in the midst of the layoffs in 2023 when things were crazy and Meta and Amazon and all these big tech companies were laying people off left and center. And the magic number has always been 30 applications. If you've been applying to 30 applications and you're not getting a response, don't tell me that it's a bad market. Your positioning is off. That's what's going on. It's like if you're a store and you have 30 people who walk into your store and no one buys a thing, don't say that the economy is bad. It's because what you have in your store is either not a fit for the people who walk into the door, or you're not presenting your product properly. So that is the same thing. So that's your metric in terms of figuring out how many applications in order for you to know that you're targeting the right role, your positioning is on point, and the way you're articulating your value on your resume, on your LinkedIn, through conversations is the right articulation. Okay, so one of the things that I asked this client to do is actually create a Trello board. And the Trello board was a fantastic way for us to visualize his work in progress. Look, I used to be an agile coach and I'm very data driven. And the thing that I do is I always tell people no data, no drama, meaning don't get upset and panic without looking at the data. Don't make assumptions about what's working and what's not working unless we look at the data. Because this guy was starting to doubt himself. He was starting to think, well, I'll never get a job. I will never get an interview. And what I asked him to do is to show me the data, show me all the roles that he's applied to, show me the resume that he used. And what I noticed is that he was applying to the wrong roles. The roles were simply not a fit to his experience, and he didn't see that. And I helped him see it. You know, it's funny because a lot of you will say, well, I know what I want. I understand my capability. But it's almost like when you put on a dress or an outfit. Do you ever put on an outfit and you find that you need to ask someone if it looks good on you? Yeah, because it's very hard for us to be 100% self-aware. Sometimes we don't notice when something isn't a fit for us. And again, this is why you need that outside perspective. So I saw the patterns and I said, hey, I noticed that you are applying to roles that are heavy on the AI. I noticed that you're applying to roles that are very adamant about software, development experience, which you don't have a ton of experience in technically. And looking at all these little tiny nuances helped him adjust his job search strategy. So he does not waste time applying to the wrong roles, because you can try to game the system. You can try to say that you've done things that you didn't do. But at the end of the day, they'll know. They'll know that you don't have the experience. They'll know that what you're saying is fake, especially if you're not talking about specific things that you've done. A lot of you, when you build your resume is very vague. It sounds like everyone else because you're not being specific. You're not telling a true story. You're not talking about the nuances of what you've done. And that is why you don't end up getting selected for interviews. And when you try to apply to roles that are not a fit, this is where the vagueness becomes worse. Okay, what if you still do not believe it will work? So when I work with clients, in our first call, like there's a lot of doubt. I don't know if this is going to work. This is very emotional. You're making a change in your career. You want to stretch yourself, but part of you isn't sure if it's going to happen. And that fear is normal, especially if you've tried doing this before and you've tried applying before and it didn't pan out. It's kind of like a patient who's been sick for so many years. They've tried all kinds of medication, and then they find a doctor who's really talented, but they're still doubting if that doctor is going to help them. They're going to say, well, maybe I'm different. Maybe I'm not curable. But the reality is, you're only feeling that way because of your past, failed attempts. And so there needs to be an element of belief. And self-belief is not magical, but it is necessary. And what I want to say to you is it's not about faking and fake believing that it's going to happen. It's about being honest with yourself and asking yourself, am I a talented person? Am I a smart person? Like, what are difficult things that I've accomplished in my life that show that I'm capable of doing things that are challenging and that are non-typical? And if you are able to identify something that you have done in your life that is non-typical because of your grit, because of your attitude, then the likelihood of you succeeding is high. Okay? So I'll give you guys an example based on me versus my clients, because some of the things that my clients share with me are highly confidential. I went through a pancreatic surgery and it was very hard, but I got through it. I came to Canada on my own at the age of 18 without my parents. My parents have never once stepped foot into Canada. I built my entire life alone without, an immediate family or an extended family here. And so to me, if I had the resiliency to do that and I was able to figure out basically the path to get there, then why can't I achieve bigger goals like landing a job, which I've done many times and took my salary from 40,000 to 200,000 in 15 years. And then on top of that, built a six-figure business. That's the kind of self-belief you need to have in yourself. Compare yourself to other people. Are they more competent than you? If they've achieved the goals that you want to achieve? Probably not. So why shouldn't you believe in yourself to achieve that goal? All you need is the guidance. Because when you don't believe your experience counts, this is where you apply to unrelated roles. This is where you aim lower than necessary. This is when you hide the most unusual parts of your background. This is when you describe your accomplishments as ordinary tasks. This is when you over-explain, why someone should take a chance on you, and you get nervous in interviews and you become long-winded because you're trying too hard. And so when I worked with this client, I did notice that he was oversimplifying things that he had done 6 years ago because it felt obvious to him. He had forgotten that he went about things using a process. And my job was to slow him down and ask, how did you discover that customer segment? What information were you studying? How did you decide what to build? How did your offer change? What did your customers request? How did you train other coaches? What metrics did you track? What happened before and after your decision? And that's what helped him really go below the surface of what he's done and articulate his value. Okay, so I want to quickly summarize the 5 things that help this client succeed and get an interview in 30 days because I want you to implement it. Number 1, we stop treating him like an inexperienced career changer. He's not starting over. He has years of experience. He was an experienced founder, learning how to express his work inside a corporate model. And that distinction changed the entire strategy. Some of you discount what you've done in the past and feel like you have to start over, and that's not necessarily true. The second thing we did is we translated his experience into product and commercial language. We did not invent experience. We uncovered the process underneath the work that he had been minimizing. The fact that he was conducting customer research when he was building his business, which is something that we do in product. Segmentation, product development, pricing, positioning, team management, customer journey. We identified all of those things and we articulated them using product language. Some of my clients have trouble putting words to what they've done, and my job is to help them put the words to what they've done. The third thing is we chose a clearer market hypothesis. Rather than applying to random roles where he could theoretically do the job, we concentrated the story around product and product adjacent opportunities where he had specific skill sets, such as pricing and monetization. We built a feedback system around the search. The applications were not just random submissions. We inspected the role, the fit, the positioning, the response, and whether that resulted in an interview or not. And we use that information to iterate and to sharpen the strategy. When the market gives you information, you use it. You don't keep repeating the same strategy for 5 months and hope something changes. No. And then you don't just say, oh, it's because the market is bad. You need to take ownership. If you don't take ownership, nothing is going to change. Yes, the market is always going to be bad. It's going to be worse. And so what do? You control what you can control. The fifth thing is we prepared him to speak the language of what he's targeting. If you are applying to a director role, a VP role, a product role, whatever it is that you're applying to, you need to embrace that identity and you need to speak as that identity. So some of the things I encourage him to do is immerse himself in how product leaders think and communicate. Listen to product conversations. Study how product leaders describe strategy, roadmap, customer problems. But the biggest thing was me challenging him. When my clients identify their ideal role, I get them to build their story using a specific framework that I share. And once they do that, we sit down and it's almost like an interview that I do. I ask them about every single thing that they've done in the past 10 years. And that brings out the conversation and makes it more natural. And that is what we use to build the resume, because you want the resume to kind of feel like a story about your career. Okay. So the thing that I want to leave you with, I wanted to share the story with you as an inspiration, because I bet that you are a product, professional out there, whether you're someone who wants to pivot into product and you know that what you've done was product, but maybe the title wasn't there, or you're someone who is already, a product leader, maybe a director of product, and you want to move up. Maybe you're a senior individual contributor who knows that you should get to the next level, or maybe you're just not happy with your organization. You're sick and tired of it, and you'd rather find an organization that aligns with your values, that has a product that you're excited about. I invite you to book a career diagnosis with me. My goal, look, it's my birthday on Sunday. And my gift is to be able to help more people. That's my gift to myself, is to actually help more people. It gives me a lot of joy when that happens. And as part of my birthday, instead of, it's like I'm giving you guys a gift as part of my birthday, and giving you guys the opportunity to hop on a career diagnosis where I'm going to tell you in 15 minutes what's blocking you from achieving the result that you want to achieve. Whether it's hitting $200,000 salary, whether it's growing your product career, whether it's getting interviews, whatever it is that's blocking you, I will identify it in 15 minutes. And that alone is going to save you thousands of hours in terms of following the wrong strategy. And if after the conversation, I feel like I can help you and there's a possibility that we could be a fit working together, then I can talk to you about my program. All right. So I hope that this has been valuable for folks. And if you want to book the career diagnosis, here's the criteria. You need to be making 6 figures. I generally do not work with anyone who makes less than 6 figures, because all the clients that I work with are very experienced professional. You need to have more than 10 years of experience. Generally, my clients are 15 years and more, but 10 is the minimum that you need to have in order to work with me. If you fit that criteria, then you can book the career diagnosis and we can chat and I can create a strategy for you. So how do you book the career diagnosis? It's very simple. All you need to do is you need to, let me show you, you need to go into my LinkedIn profile and you need to click on the book an appointment button. And when you do that, you will get this page. I recommend you watch this 10-minute video. I talk about my story and clients that I've helped. And then click on this button called Book Your Career Diagnosis, where you can basically answer these questions. It only takes 2 minutes. And it helps me understand what you're struggling with so that I can spend more time with you in the career diagnosis, helping you come up with a meaningful strategy. All right. I would love to know who's watching. Even if you just tell me like what country you're tuning from, that would be amazing because it gives me data in terms of who's watching my lives and it encourages me to do more of these. And if you enjoyed this and you found this valuable, if you learned one thing, even if it's just one thing, I would love it if you give this live a like. It means a lot to me. It's also going to help with the algorithm. It's going to help, someone who really needs help see it. So I really appreciate that. Okay. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Whether you're watching this live or watching the replay, feel free to like this and comment. And yeah, if you feel like if this spoke to you and you're in a situation where you want to get better opportunities, but you're not getting interviews, then feel free to book the career diagnosis and let's see if we can help you. All right. I hope you have a wonderful night.